Good afternoon, everyone. Today I'm going to speak about media and society, as also how media controls politics. In this regard, I'm going to speak about hegemony. Hegemony refers to the control of ideology of a society. The dominant group maintains power by imposing their ideology on everyone. Hegemony was most likely derived from the Greek word hegemonia. Hegemonia means leader. Gramsci defined hegemony as a form of control exercised by the dominant class in Marxist sense of a group controlling the means of production. Antonio Gramsci. Antonio Gramsci's work became a fundamental part of Western Marxist thought. The Italian philosopher Antonio Gramsci developed the concept of cultural hegemony out of Karl Marx theory. Gramsci, an Italian philosopher and a politician who was imprisoned during the Mussolini's regime, wrote more than 30 notebooks and 300 pages of history and analysis during his imprisonment. Many of his writings can be found in his 3-volume prison notebooks. In Gramsci's own words, socialism is precisely the religion that must overwhelm Christianity. In the new order, socialism will triumph by the first capturing the culture via infiltration of schools, universities, churches, and the media by transforming consciousness of a society. Gramsci argued that consent to the rule of dominant group is achieved by the spread of ideologies, beliefs, assumptions, and values through the social institutions such as schools, churches, courts, and media, among others. Gramsci's Marxists define the superstructure as everything, not directly having to do with production, such as family, culture, religion, education, media, and law. These institutions do the work of socializing people into norms. Cultural hegemony manifested when those ruled by the dominant group comes to believe that the economic social conditions of their society are natural rather than created by people with vested interest. Gramsci developed the concept of cultural hegemony in an effort to explain why the worker-led revolution that Marxists predicted in the previous century took place. Gramsci realized that there were more to the dominance of capitalism than the class structure and its exploitation of workers. Gramsci believed that Marx had not given enough credit to the power to the ideology. The intellectuals written between 1929 and 1935, Gramsci described the power of ideology to reproduce the social structure through institutions such as the religious institutions as well as the educational institute. The study of philosophy, Gramsci discusses the role of common sense, dominant ideas about society, about place in it, in producing the cultural hegemony. This form of common sense fosters the belief that success and social mobility are strictly the responsibility of the individual. Gramsci himself was inconsistent in the usage of term hegemony in his prison notebooks, as suggested at one point that hegemony was a function of a securing interest. It superstructures into two major levels. One that will be called civil society, and the other will be the organism called the private and the political society or the state. Masses of the population to gender direction imposing on the society's life by dominant fundamental groups are key in his notebooks. Gramsci's consent in historically caused by prestige, that is called the consequent of confidence, which the dominant group enjoys because of its position, function in the world of production. Political government names the apparatus of the state coercive power, which legally enforces discipline on those groups who do not consent. Today, today we see corporate aiming to construct new common. Let me go to the next point of Noam Chomsky. He's a famous philosopher coming from production. His thoughts are key to understanding how media plays a role and how politics. In the presence of globalization, the whole world is depending on the media to echo news, information. The media also plays a central role in the field of politics. And therefore, it is worth and understanding how media participate in imposing its hegemony on the population and how it affects the global politics. So when I'm going back to this, Ed Herman and Noam Chomsky outlined the propaganda model. It's called PA. For the first time in 1988 book of Manufacturing Consent, The Political Economy of Mass Media. Model was conceived from the perspective of political economy of communication to explain the behavioral and performance patterns of the US mass media in relation to the news production. Herman M. Chomsky propaganda model from diverse angles with the aim of deepening its current dynamism and validity for explaining mass media production and content in advanced capitalist democracies. In their book, Manufacturing Consent, Herman and Chomsky says a propaganda model focuses on this inequality of wealth and power and its multi-level effects on mass media interests and choices. It traces the routes by which money, power are able to filter out news fits to print, marginalize dissent, and allow the government and dominant private interests to get their messages across to the public. In Manufacturing Consent, Noam Chomsky Ed Herman outlined what they call the propaganda model, describing invisible force. You must have heard about the invisible force. They've always, the cat's paw and all these things coming up, how countries control other countries from an invisible hand. So this is something for you to understand about this. Capable of ensuring that media fulfills the role of propagandist. Simply, the media mobilizes support in favor of special interests which dominate the state and private sector. Noam Chomsky, in his book Manufacturing Consent, talks about the five filters that media is subjected to the owners, the advertisers, the flake from others, and dissemination of information by powerful men, and lastly, the common enemies such as communism or terrorist. These factors are filters through which news passes and in turn shapes the public opinion. The core of propaganda model is constituted by news filters. Filter one, ownership. For political economy, the private ownership of a mass media is crucial. Explaining the media production, since it's considered that this factor sets in a general orientation. The propaganda model offers an encompassing view in which different elements of ownership are interconnected with other social, cultural phenomena, with communication possibilities. The market tendency is to ignore those people and things that do not serve its goal and to promote individualist values of accumulation as a prime objective. This needs maximizing profit. So then I'm going to the next level of filter, dependence on advertising revenue. This second filter is closely related to the interest of main source of financial support for the most media outlets consisting of money received from sponsors or advertising. Sometimes it's difficult to measure even though we analyze the thing. So let's go to the third filter, sourcing of news in media. Herman M. Chomsky explains that due to the need to cut cost because of its main sources, relationship between the media and politicians and corporates, this is the main filter how the news is filtered. Sectors in context of urgent news delivery and deadlines pressures news productions as well as it suffers from dependency on official source for information. In this filter, it is explained distinguishing between planned influence and non-planned or neutral influence on information that is provided. Flick or countermeasures to discipline the media. The standard liberal view holds that the media is independent from other powers. However, one can certainly observe the will and capacity of the agents of elites to control information. Secondly, there is an attack and neutralization mechanism that comes into play when inconvenient information is revealed. On a more general level, the pressure from powerful entities acts as a reinforcement of the media tendency to accept pro-elite opinions and interest. The context of exaggerated patriotism and the war against terror promoted since 9/11 terrorist attack, together with already established notions of humanitarian wars, which was in the Sri Lankan conflict, are prime examples how media was controlled. These news bulletins have created an environment conducive to towering official lines, and they also increase the possibilities of false, simplistic, but nevertheless effective condemnation. Fifth filter, anti-communism as a control mechanism. In general, temporal terms, the ideological slants that this filter identifies refers to the discrediting of opposing voices and dissimilar of anything that might lead to democratic as well as social change, or that simply diverges from the elite view, either internationally or domestically. The two factors which are predominant by various institutions, as we know. The theory states how propaganda works in mass media. The model tries to understand how population is manipulated and how social, economic, political attitudes are fashioned in the minds of people through propaganda. An anti-factor and a pro-factor are some of the major factors influencing the propaganda model. Legitimacy is necessary in this. So let me go to a example from India. It is well-known Bal Thackeray, the Shiva Sena leader, the Shiva Sena party of Maharashtra, who was a journalist, and later on he became a pro-nationalist as well as a very strong leader in the Maharashtra province and Bombay. Popular figure who formed Shiva Sena, the army of Shiva, back in 1966 in the Indian state of Maharashtra. Over the years, Shiva Sena has gained headlines. He may have succeeded in changing Bombay's official name to Mumbai or Mumba Devi. He remained the prisoner of image who wanted to control the big city. The influential role of Shiva Sena leader Bal Thackeray or Bal Shahib as mediator of the industrial disputes, nexus between stars, film financing using the cinematic apparatus and exhibition sites for right-wing propaganda and electoral campaigns. Under the leadership of Shiva Sena became the dominant political force in the western Indian state of Maharashtra. Thackeray began his career in the early 1950s as a cartoonist for the Free Press Journal in Mumbai. Today it's Bombay. His cartoons also appeared in the Japanese daily newspaper Asahi Shimbun and in Sunday edition of the New York Times. In the 1960s, he became increasingly involved in politics. He developed a strong regional following through his work for a weekly Marathi language journal called Marmik, which he published with his brother. In 1966, he founded the Shiva Sena party. When Shiva Sena gained political control of Maharashtra in 90s, that is nearly 30 years later, after he became a cartoonist, he had Bombay renamed Mumbai for the goddess Mumba Devi. In alliance with Bharatiya Janata Party, the Shiva Sena won 138 seats out of 288 seats in the state assembly in 1995. Thackeray, one-time journalist, now politician, made use of media propaganda as an effective tool to connect with his audience and to portray himself as a man of the people. Shiva Sena debates too play their part in polarizing public opinion and creating binaries, often deviating attention from issues that really matter. The The internet of propaganda is to glorify the idea and stir public opinion. So let me come up with a question. What extent does Thackeray's role play in central role of construction of the image? Let me also speak about a famous entrepreneur of India. It is no other than Tata, Ratan Tata. Is one of the most celebrated industrialists in India. In 1991, J.R.D. Tata, that is current Ratan Tata's father, stepped down as a chairman of Tata Sons, naming Ratan Tata as his successor. Mr. Tata joined the Tata Group in 1962 after serving various companies. He was appointed director in charge of National Radio Electronics Company in 1971. In 1981, he was named the chairman of Tata Industries, the group's other holding companies. It is no other than Mohammad Nasheed, a well-known president, current speaker, and the first democratic elected president of the Maldives. And when President Nasheed came to power, it was the first time there was a multi-party electoral election where several party leaders contested, and he became the president of the first democratically elected president of Maldives. The Sri Lankan Civil War was one of the longest, as well as complex and most destructive conflicts in Asia. The ethnic conflict between majority Sinhalese and the minority Sri Lankan Tamil community. Sri Lankan conflict, different conflicting parties or groups promoted and constructed their political ideologies through media. Photographs. According to it is expected to examine how the gaze of photographs construct an opinion within the minds of general public in relation to images published by both parties during the Sri Lankan conflict and that period. The photographs could be easily manipulated with the support of modern technology. It has happened all over the world, and it will happen there in the future also. Some of these photographs are between fiction and facts. Some of these images depicts innocence and helplessness. Certain images are framed, and they are rare, politically predetermined images to create hero identity, patriotism that gains public support. Some images display death, pain, suffering. Gramsci's ideas remain the starting point for such an inquiry. Thank you for giving up so much of your time. Well, I enjoyed talking to you all. You all have been a great audience. I'm pleased to answer questions.